They exploited the whole staff. I exposed everything. You ever grow up with one weird obsession that ends up shaping your entire adult life? For me, it was computers. I was the kid who took apart the family desktop just to see if I could put it back together. And to my parents' horror, I usually could. I didn't have fancy training or certifications at first, just a relentless curiosity and a lot of trial and error. By the time I hit my late teens, I was already fixing neighbors' Wi-Fi issues, building custom setups for friends, and slowly realizing, yeah, this wasn't just a hobby anymore. I'd like to say I had some kind of grand plan, but like a lot of people in IT, I stumbled my way into the field job by job. You start out small. Contract gigs, late-night server swaps, troubleshooting, cryptic error codes over the phone with someone who thinks the mouse is broken because the battery died. Over time, though, you get good. You learn the ins and outs of every system, every shortcut, every kind of chaos a company can throw at you. Eventually, I landed a full-time position at a medium-sized service and distribution company in Ontario. This place was something else. They weren't tiny, a couple dozen employees across departments, but they operated like it was still the 90s. The tech was ancient. I'm talking patchwork systems duct taped together. One piece of software for dispatching, another for inventory, a separate one for payroll, and a completely different one for finance. None of them synced, none of them spoke the same language, and moving data between them was a nightmare. I was one of just two people in the entire IT department, me and another guy, both juggling everything from forgotten email passwords to full-scale hardware failures. No breaks, no backups, just us. Still, I didn't mind at first. I'd dealt with worse, and despite the tech mess, the people weren't bad. That made a difference. I figured, hey, fix what I can, ride it out, and see where it goes. I'd even started making notes on how to maybe streamline some of their mess, just in case they ever asked. And then, they asked. They wanted to modernize. Finally, someone upstairs had realized the inefficiency of bouncing between 4 different systems for a single report and greenlit a transition to an ERP system, Enterprise Resource Planning Software. For those unfamiliar, ERP is the kind of software that eats entire businesses. It handles inventory, finances, HR, sales, purchasing, the whole deal, and connects it all in one central brain. Done right, it saves tons of time. Done wrong, it's a corporate lobotomy. They had no clue what to pick, so I threw in a recommendation. I'd worked with a specific ERP system at a previous job and knew it inside and out. It was a beast, but I knew how to tame it. Surprisingly, they took my advice. I guess I sounded convincing enough. At first, I was optimistic. This could have been a turning point, not just for the company, but for my role. Implementing an ERP system is no joke, and I thought maybe this was my chance to step up and prove how valuable I really was. I had no idea how much of a grind it would be. The day the ERP software officially went live felt less like a celebration and more like arming a bomb and hoping it wouldn't go off. I wasn't new to implementation chaos, but this was next level. The ERP system was powerful, no doubt about it, but it wasn't exactly plug and play. It had a steep learning curve, and every single department needed a different piece of it. Dispatch needed real-time order tracking. Inventory wanted live counts and reorder alerts. Finance needed integration with payroll. HR wanted personnel. Files digitized and accessible. Everyone had demands. Everyone had questions. And I was the guy who had to make it all work. I became the de facto project lead, not because they gave me the title or the pay bump, but because nobody else had a clue how the system worked. I'd helped choose it, so now it was my baby. Every question, every issue, every hiccup came to me. And the hiccups? They were endless. Printers that wouldn't talk to the ERP system. Barcode scanners that suddenly stopped reading. Inventory data that mysteriously duplicated. I was up to my ears in training sessions, bug reports, and last-minute fixes. I even had to create cheat sheets and video tutorials for the more tech-averse employees. One day, I'd be in the warehouse showing a receiver how to verify a shipment and trigger the stock update. The next, I'd be helping someone in sales figure out how to pull a customer's full order history without breaking the entire database. And all the while, my regular IT duties didn't stop. Hardware still failed. People still forgot passwords. Email still broke. I was juggling implementation chaos with everyday tech support, and I was getting burned out fast. To their credit, most of the staff were trying. Sure, some grumbled, but once they saw what the ERP could do, how it could pull up vendor delivery speeds or sales patterns with a few clicks, they bought in. It started to feel like we were turning a corner. Systems were syncing. Processes were stabilizing. People were adjusting. For a while, I thought we'd made it through the storm. Then the company decided to expand. And all hell broke loose. So picture this. After months of sleepless nights, countless fixes, and more caffeine than I care to admit, the ERP system was finally in decent shape. Not perfect. No system ever is. But working. People could do their jobs, reports ran mostly correctly, and I even started sleeping through the night again. And then, just as I'm catching my breath, management walks in with their next brilliant move. We're expanding, they said. New clients, new vendors, bigger footprint, we're going national. I should have known something was wrong just from how excited they looked. In theory, expanding sounds great. Business growth, new markets, more money, but in practice, it meant one thing for me. Time zones, and not just one or two. Canada is a big country. You've got Atlantic time, which is an hour and a half ahead of us in Ontario. Then you've got Pacific time, Vancouver, etc., which is 3 full hours behind. This messed up everything. Suddenly, I was getting emails and support tickets before I'd even made coffee. A sales rep in Halifax would fire off a request at 8 a.m. their time, which hit my inbox at 6:30 a.m. Then someone in Vancouver would call with a critical issue at 3 p.m. their time. 6 p.m. for me, just as I was about to eat dinner or step outside. And they expected instant replies. Every single time. I'd get passive-aggressive notes like, "Hey Bob, just checking if you saw my message earlier," or "Any updates on the issue I sent over this morning?" As if I was ignoring them. No one seemed to care that I wasn't on the clock yet. Or worse, that I'd already logged a full day and was officially off. I brought it up to management. Told them, "Hey, this is stretching my workday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or later. I'm getting burned out. Something's gotta give." They nodded like they understood and then came back with this brilliant idea. "We're going to stagger your shifts." Meaning, they wanted me to start at 6 a.m. and work until 2:30 p.m. Then my colleague, the only other IT guy, would start at 10:30 a.m. and stay until 7 p.m. That way, there'd be tech coverage from early morning to late evening. Perfect. Right? Except for one tiny detail. My coworker had a family. 2 young kids, a spouse who worked nights. He couldn't do a 10:30 to 7 shift. He literally couldn't. He told them flat out it wouldn't work. They told him it wasn't optional, so he quit. Just like that, I went from part of a 2-man team to an entire IT department of 1. And the worst part? Management barely blinked. "We'll hire someone new," they said. "You'll just have to hold things down for a bit." Right. They put out a job listing, but I saw the salary they were offering. It was a joke, way below market for the kind of ERP experience they needed. I knew for a fact they weren't going to find anyone remotely qualified. No one in their right mind would take that offer. And while they were looking, I was drowning in support, system updates, hardware problems, network issues, new hires needing full training from scratch. All of it dumped on me. And because of the time zone chaos, my workday just kept stretching longer and longer. I asked for a raise. Denied. I asked for overtime. They laughed, actually laughed, and said, "You're IT. You're exempt." Which, I'll admit, I didn't believe at first. So I looked it up. Turns out, under Ontario labor law, some IT professionals are indeed exempt from standard overtime rules, depending on their job classification. And yeah, unfortunately, I fell into that category. That stung a lot. I was putting in 50, sometimes 60 hours a week, solving problems no one else could even begin to understand, keeping the entire system from falling apart with nothing but sheer willpower. And they had the audacity to tell me, "That's just part of the job." That's when something in me flipped. If I wasn't going to be paid fairly, not even acknowledged, then maybe it was time to look at who else they were shortchanging. I didn't go full scorched earth right away. That's not really my style. But after months of being brushed off, I started paying closer attention, not just to my own hours, but to everyone else's. See, one of the things about working on an ERP system is that you see everything. Every login, every logout, every transaction, timestamp. Even if someone forgets to sign out at the end of the day, the system auto-logs them after 15 minutes of inactivity. It's all tracked. Quietly, reliably, permanently. I wasn't looking for dirt at first. I was just curious. But the more I poked around, the more patterns I noticed. There were warehouse guys clocking in at 6 a.m. sharp every day, way before their official start time, and still logging activity past 5 p.m. office staff responding to emails late into the evening. Sales reps entering call notes from hotel Wi-Fi connections while traveling. These people were salaried, sure, but Ontario labor law is clear. Salaried doesn't mean unlimited. If you're not a manager or supervisor, you're still entitled to overtime for any hours worked beyond 44 a week. And guess what? Hardly any of them were managers. I started wondering, were they getting paid for all those extra hours? Or were they, like me, just being worked to the bone and tossed a pat on the back in place of actual compensation? So I ran a report, just out of curiosity. I filtered out all the managers and execs, then pulled login data for everyone else. From the day the ERP went live all the way to the present, I dumped the raw data into a spreadsheet, ran some formulas, and totaled up how many weeks each person had worked more than 44 hours. It was staggering. Some had averaged 55-hour weeks for over a year straight. One guy in inventory had more than 300 hours of unpaid overtime in just 6 months. A customer service rep had logged in every Saturday morning for 11 weeks in a row. It wasn't just a few edge cases. It was nearly everyone. These people weren't just loyal. They were getting exploited. And not one of them seemed to know it. That's when the idea hit me. If management was so quick to tell me I was exempt, maybe it was time the rest of The staff learned what they were entitled to. But before I did anything, I needed backup. I reached out to an employment lawyer. A friend of a friend, actually. Someone who specialized in labor rights and had handled group claims before. I didn't give him specifics at first, just asked hypothetically. If a group of employees found out they were owed overtime pay, what could they do? His answer: more than you think. He told me that in Ontario, if salaried non-managerial employees could prove they regularly worked over 44 hours a week, they were entitled to overtime pay. And if multiple employees had similar claims, they could band together, and a lawyer could negotiate on their behalf, potentially even file a class action. That's all I needed to hear. I told him I had the data. I told him I had proof, and I asked him, would he be willing to take the case if they wanted to pursue it? He said yes, so I made a plan. Quietly, carefully, I started compiling a personalized overtime report for every single non-managerial employee, their names, departments, weekly hours worked, and estimated unpaid overtime. I even color-coded the damn thing. This wasn't just numbers. This was evidence. Then I lined up a new job, one that actually respected my time and paid market rate. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving until the offer letter was signed, and I'd cleared all the background checks. No warning, no big announcement. I just packed up my stuff and walked out, but not before scheduling one last email. My exit wasn't loud. No big scene, no dramatic farewell speech in the break room. I handed in my badge, shook a few hands, and walked out like any other Friday. But behind the scenes, I'd already loaded the cannon, and all that was left was to pull the trigger. That Monday morning at 8 a.m., every non-managerial employee in the company received an email from an anonymous address I'd set up just for this purpose. Subject line: you're legally entitled to overtime pay, no clickbait. No fluff. Just a bombshell dropped right into their inboxes with their name on it. The body of the email was short and sweet. Hi, name. Based on your login data from the company ERP system, you've likely worked well over 44 hours per week on a regular basis, and under Ontario labor law, that means you're entitled to overtime pay. Attached is a report showing your approximate unpaid overtime since the ERP system was implemented. If you're interested in claiming what you're owed, you can reach out to this employment lawyer, who's already reviewed the data and is willing to represent you. You are not alone. A former coworker who's had enough. Each employee's email had a customized Excel sheet attached. Their names, dates, total estimated hours over the legal weekly limit, and a clean, easy-to-read summary of how much they might be owed. No opinions, no rants, just cold, hard facts, and a lawyer's contact info. And then I sat back and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Within hours, the company went into full-blown panic mode. One of my friends from accounting, who hadn't yet figured out I was behind the emails, messaged me in a frenzy. Did you see what's going around? HR is freaking out. People are comparing their spreadsheets. They think it's a phishing attack. Nope, not phishing, just the truth. By lunch, the lawyer had already started getting calls, and by the end of the week, he had dozens of employees ready to sign on. People who'd been working unpaid overtime for months, even years, suddenly realizing they had legal rights, real leverage, and hard proof to back it up. Some were furious, some were shocked, but most of them relieved. Finally, someone had pulled back the curtain. A week later, the company's leadership tried to downplay it, sent out some HR memo claiming the data was misrepresented, that hours worked didn't necessarily mean hours approved, that overtime must be pre-authorized to qualify, but it was too late. The damage was done. You can't unsee the truth, especially when it's in Excel, with timestamps and auto-logout data pulled directly from their own system. The lawyer moved quickly. A group claim was filed, and negotiations started. It wasn't a class action lawsuit, not yet, but it didn't need to be. Just the threat of it was enough to get results. Eventually, the company caved. They didn't admit fault. Of course they didn't. But they paid. Quietly. In settlements. In back pay. In hush money. Tens of thousands of dollars across multiple departments. Possibly more. And all they had to do was treat me, and everyone else, like human beings. Instead, they got greedy. They wanted the long hours, the weekend, work, the midnight support calls, all without paying a dime extra. They thought no one would notice, that people would just take it because that's how it works. Well, not anymore. Once I had the data, the temptation to drop the hammer immediately was strong. But I knew better. This wasn't about rage. This was about strategy. And strategy takes patience. I'd been burned enough by this company. Overworked, underpaid, and flat out ignored. But I wasn't going to let that cloud my judgment. If I wanted this to stick, if I really wanted it to hurt, I had to play it smart. First step, line up a new job. No matter how tempting the revenge felt, I wasn't about to light the match until I had somewhere safe to land. So I started, reaching out to contacts, old coworkers, college friends, even a few people from IT forums I'd contributed to over the years. I cast a wide net, and thankfully, the fish started biting. Turns out ERP expertise, especially deep, hands-on, implementation knowledge, is pretty rare. Most companies have to outsource it or spend a fortune training someone. But me? I was the guy who built the system from the ground up and kept it alive single-handedly for years. That made me valuable. Way more valuable than my current company ever realized. Within a few weeks, I had interviews lined up. Some remote, some local. I was picky. I wasn't about to jump from one fire into another. I made sure to ask the right questions. How big is the IT team? What are the hours really like? Do you believe in work-life balance or just say it during onboarding? Eventually, I found it. A mid-sized firm with a solid team, sane expectations, and best of all, a real appreciation for their tech staff. They paid market rate. They had a ticketing system that wasn't a dumpster fire. And they even offered flexible hours. I took the offer, signed the papers, and breathed a little easier. For the first time in months, I saw a way out. Now came step 2, arming the troops. With the job secured, I reached out to the employment lawyer I'd spoken to earlier. This time, I gave him everything. The data, the structure, the explanation behind the ERP logs, and my theory on which employees were eligible for overtime. He reviewed it and said, "You've got gold here." But he also cautioned me. I couldn't file anything on behalf of the others. They had to come forward themselves. What I could do, though, was make them aware, show them the proof, give them the tools to make a decision. No pressure, no promises, just facts. So I did exactly that. I took the login data I had compiled, time-stamped, organized by employee, and created customized Excel sheets, one for each non-managerial staff member. They showed daily and weekly login times, total hours worked each week, hours over the legal 44-hour weekly limit, a projected estimate of what they could be owed in unpaid OT. And then I wrote the email. Not angry, not dramatic, just clear and to the point. I explained the labor law, attached their personal data, and included the name and contact of the lawyer, who had already agreed to represent any employee who wanted to pursue a claim. All that was left was to deliver it. Scheduled the email blast for the Monday morning after my final day. Timed for 8 a.m., just as the first cup of office coffee was being poured. That way, I'd be long gone before the first scream echoed down the hallway. No way to trace it back to me. No breadcrumbs, just truth, hand-delivered to the inbox of every person they'd been squeezing dry. And then, I walked out of that building for the last time. No warning, no drama. Just a polite handshake, a thank you email to HR, and a quiet smile. Because I knew exactly what was coming. The Monday after I left felt like Christmas morning. Not because I missed the place. Far from it, but because I knew that at exactly 8 a.m., a digital bomb was going off in their inboxes. And I didn't even have to be there to watch the chaos unfold. Of course, I did have a few inside connections still, people who hadn't yet put 2 and 2 together. So I got to enjoy front row updates as everything unraveled in real time. By 8:15 a.m., people were whispering across desks. By 8:30, someone had printed out their spreadsheet and marched straight to HR, demanding answers. By 9 a.m., one of my old warehouse buddies messaged me saying, "Yo, did you send that? People are losing it. Some folks are crying. HR says it's a scam." I told him I didn't know what he was talking about. HR tried to do damage control immediately. They sent out an all-staff memo claiming the data was incomplete, inaccurate, and possibly fabricated. They told everyone to delete the attachments and forward suspicious emails to the IT department, which was ironic, considering there was no longer an IT department. They tried to say that just because someone was logged into the system didn't mean they were working, that overtime needed to be pre-approved, that salaried employees agreed to some flexibility in their hours, but it was too late. The numbers didn't lie. Employees had their own logs now, and the more they talked to each other, the more they realized how common their situation was. This wasn't a one-off case. This was systemic. By that afternoon, the lawyer I'd partnered with had already gotten over a dozen emails. He was swamped. People from every department, customer service, sales, accounting, warehouse, all asking the same thing. Is this real? Can I actually get paid for this? Do I need to prove anything else? He reassured them. Yes, it's real. Yes, you're likely entitled. And no, you don't need to lift a finger. The ERP system did all the documenting for you. By the end of that week, nearly 24 employees had signed letters of representation. The lawyer sent a formal notice to the company. A group claim was being assembled for unpaid overtime under the Ontario Employment Standards Act. And then, things got quiet. The company stopped talking. HR stopped replying. Managers started holding closed-door meetings. My friend in accounting told me payroll had gone into review lockdown, meaning no one could access or adjust their own timesheets. It was the corporate version of hiding under the bed. Eventually, after about 2 weeks of awkward silence, they caved. Not publicly, of course. No press release, no grand apology, just quiet settlement offers, each one delivered by envelope or email. No admission of wrongdoing. Just a lump sum amount and a document to sign, along with a non-disclosure clause naturally. Some people took it. Others held out. A few demanded more and got more. Once the lawyer reminded the company that the ERP system could be subpoenaed, if it came to that. In the end, they paid. Tens of thousands, maybe more, all because they tried to save a few bucks by not paying me and everyone else for the hours we were already working. And best of all, they never figured out it was me.
The case has been heard. The stories have been told. Now it's your turn to judge. Leave your verdict in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. The Court of Stories is always in session.